Well, welcome back to We Die Like Men. I'm Mike, and today I wanted to kind of mix it up a little bit. This channel is a collection of topics and things, a lot of guy stuff. And while not every guy is into this particular topic or any of these topics, I think hoping we have a wide enough variety where most people can find something they enjoy. For me, one of my enjoyments is firearms. I'm an avid hunter. I enjoy target shooting, things like that. So I thought we'd kind of go over a question that I get from people that come up in conversation that I see other people posting, things like that. Before we get too much into the topic, just I'm not one to just take advice from some random person on the internet. So I thought maybe give you a little background as to why I I'm going over these topics and do I have any clue what I'm talking about. You'll have to decide that for yourself. But so I turned 50 in 3.5 months. I started shooting at about 5. Started with 22 caliber rifles. You know, my dad had a lot of them and other firearms, and we'd go shooting quite often, several times a month, a lot of times, kind of like May through September. Living in Maine, wintertime, there wasn't indoor ranges back then, so weren't really just going to go trudge out to a sand pit somewhere and waste deep snow in February and go target shooting too much. There were people that did. We didn't. Um, Avid hunter, really enjoy deer hunting and bird hunting, grouse, things like that. Some rabbit, some turkey. We get a lot of turkeys around here now, although I have yet to actually harvest a turkey because I haven't had a chance to get out as much as I'd like. Hoping to change that. We have a spring and fall. I prefer fall. I'm fishing in the spring and stuff, but I have shot competitively. I have won competitive shooting matches, primarily shotgun. I worked at a trap range shooting trap. If you're not familiar with like trap, sporting clays, and skeet, it's those typically orange clay discs that get thrown, different angles, different directions, depending on what you know discipline you're doing. Trap, they're usually going away from you, kind of in a semicircle arc. Uh, Skeet, they're side to side. Sporting clays is very much like you're walking through the woods, and it's supposed to resemble either a bird or a rabbit. They can come from behind you, towards you, left, right. You don't always know where they're coming from. That's what I think I love about it. You can do what they call sighting pairs, where you get to see it, but a lot of times I don't even like that. I like to be surprised because it's a little more reality to it. Um, and I have won, like I said, mostly in trap that I've won first place and I've won second place. I taught firearm safety as well as marksmanship. My father was a firearms and hunting safety instructor for the state of Maine. My grandfather, all of his life, firearms. Fought in World War II through Europe as an infantry soldier. My father was U.S. Coast Guard during Vietnam. He didn't go over, but he was there. I was in the military for a while. I have shot everything from, muzzle loading black powder to belt fed machine guns. Um, a very, very close friend of the family that was more like family was a huge collector, as well as a licensed dealer. He had such a wide variety and range of firearms, and we would often go shooting with them. I have shot so many different makes, models, vintage of firearms. I have been through some of them, physically taking them apart, cleaning them, putting them back together. I've handled most things out there that you would consider shoulder fired, handgun, rifle, shotgun, things like that, or at least from light medium machine guns down, and a little bit of heavier stuff. But and I do a lot of research. I spend a lot of time with it. It's a subject I enjoy. I want to learn all I can. I don't just research it to one or two places. I really dig into it. I look deep into things because I'm interested in them from a mechanical standpoint, a historical standpoint, and just what works, what doesn't work, what other people are seeing and doing. Because I do a lot of this, I get approached by people like, what should I get? I want to buy this, I want to buy that, or I think I need a firearm for this or that. There's no one right answer. You need to kind of figure out the person a little bit, what their abilities, their needs. I'm just the dog's on the deck. That's where the door's open. A little bit here. Bedroom can go out onto the deck too. So, and just various things like that. You always be the judge. You know you better. But back to kind of what the video is going to be about is in conversation with a lot of my buddies and from guys that were law enforcement in the 70s, 60s, 70s, 80s, up through to guys that still are law enforcement, and hunters and personal defense kind of things. Sorry, I'm just here and so I thought somebody was coming up on the deck. Um, you know, we go back and forth on handguns as semi-auto, revolver. I think there are times when a revolver is superior to a semi-auto. And a lot of people are going to start clacking away on the keyboard or turn the video off because they're like, this guy's an idiot. But hear me out. I carry a semi-auto 9mm every day. As long as I'm going somewhere I legally can, and here in Maine I can most places. Obviously there are exceptions with that, but I carry one. That's what I carry. I have a red dot on it. That's what I carry. However, I really like revolvers. Now, right now, I technically only own one. Um, I'm not going to bring handguns or firearms out physically on this channel right now. It's a new channel. YouTube's policy on that is a little weird. I want to let the channel grow, season a little bit, feel things out, check on a few things. But for me, a revolver has a couple advantages of one, while modern autoloaders with modern ammunition that are properly maintained and cared for are exceptionally reliable, especially if you have good magazines and ammo. Most of them are exceptionally reliable. There are those exceptions. There are some crap being made out there. But we own everything from Glocks and SIGs, Canics, Tauruses. I have owned H&Ks. I have owned Colts. I have a Kimber as well too. CZ, God, I'm Ruger. I don't know if I've owned a Smith & Wesson semi-auto. I've shot tons of them. Um, I had no real reliability issues with any of them. Some like certain ammo better than others. My Kimber, of all of them, is one of the more fussy ones on magazines. And it's a 1911, and it doesn't like Kimber magazines usually. Although the one that I have with it now has been very, very good. So all my spares are just like typical 1911 style magazines because I won't pay Kimber's price for a magazine. Sorry. Um, my revolver is a Ruger Blackhawk new model and 357 Magnum and 38 Special. It falls under what they call the convertible style, where it has a 9mm cylinder. I did not get that with the gun when I purchased it. I believe this one was, but I'd have to buy a cylinder, send it out, and have it timed so everything lined up. It's not worth it to me for this one. It would cost me about as much as it would cost to just go buy a convertible with the 9mm. So I'm just kind of keeping it that way. My reasoning for saying that the kind of back to the reliability part, revolvers just work. Rarely do they jam. If you have a reasonable, decent quality one, if you pull the trigger and it doesn't go bang, you either, if it's a double action, pull the trigger again. Mine's a single action. I have to pull the hammer back again. Please hold. There. I knew I heard something out there. There's my son out there and his girlfriend. I finally got the dog to come in. He's laying in the sun. I went to go pat him. It's like, geez, you're hot. I'm going to drink some water and go lay down on the bed, cool off some. He's old. He loves that sun. So, Has ever since we've had him. Well, he's a rescue, so we've had him like 6.5 years. So he's like 11 or so, getting up there for his breed. But anyways, revolvers tend to have less issue with reliability. They can. Some modern autoloaders don't have a lot. They can. Um, Another big reason for me with a revolver is they tend to have better triggers, especially in single action. You pull the hammer back and just pull the trigger. Instead of double action, where you got to pull the trigger and it pulls the hammer back, spins the cylinder. Those can be pretty heavy on a lot of firearms until you get into your really higher end ones. Um, but they have a nicer trigger. Sometimes I find I can shoot them more accurately. For me, though, the single biggest reason I like a revolver under certain circumstances over an autoloader is ammunition. Um, so I did grab a couple here. I don't know how we're going to be able to see this. 9 millimeter, really, really standard. The most common handgun round in the world, probably. I would say so. This is a good round for a lot of things. If you're traipsing through the woods and you're worried about bear, moose can be pretty nasty sometimes too. Um, Things like that, this is not the round you want. Will it do the job? It might. Will it do it quick enough that they don't absolutely destroy you first? Probably not. Um, However, while there are revolvers that shoot this, it's nowhere near as common because it doesn't have a regular rim for it to catch on. It's a rebated rim, as it's called. Something like this that has an actual lip to it where you can catch on it. That's what it indexes on to sit in the cylinder. This is a 357 Magnum. If I put them side by side, for any of you who don't know, there is a big difference in size. However, the size difference this way, the size of the actual projectile, is almost identical. This is .357, hence the name 357 Magnum. 38 Special is, by the way, .357 diameter. That is before it's fired, its diameter. 9 millimeter, 380 Auto, 357 SIG, a .355, 2 thousandths of an inch. If your eyeballs can see 2 thousandths of an inch difference holding it like this, you got pretty darn good eyesight, I would say. However, when they're both fired, after they've left the barrel of of the handgun or rifle, there are some, um, more in 57 Magnum 38 than in 9 millimeter. Lever guns, semi-autos, more in this. Um, they're both .350. The barrel has to be smaller than the diameter of the bullet so it can be crushed into the lands and grooves. Gas seal is created. It allows it to spin. There's your increased accuracy and velocity. That's what a rifle is. It has rifling. Handguns have rifling too, but we don't call them a rifle, obviously. Your 9 millimeter is going to typically have a 115 to 124 grain projectile. There are lighter, there are heavier. But those are the two most common. Let's say out of a full size handgun, a Beretta M9, a Glock 17, those kind of things. Something in that 4.5 to maybe 5 inch barrel. Some of your bigger ones. Standard 9 millimeter, 1150 feet per second with a 115 to 124. If you go plus P's, you might get that up a little over 1200 feet per second. Not bad. Standard 357 Magnum. They don't make a plus P for this, but some ammunition manufacturers load these a little what we call hotter, a little bit higher velocity, a little higher chamber pressure, which increases your velocity. Out of that same 5 inch barreled kind of revolver, you're in around that 1400 feet per second has been my experience. Again, depends on what you're shooting. But in that 125, these usually are 125 grain. There are lighter. There are also a lot heavier. I have 158 grain jacketed soft point. Looks just like this, pretty much so, but it's 158 grain. That's better for if a bear is charging you. If a moose, that heavier bullet will penetrate their thicker hide better. These 125s would do it, but these are more what law enforcement used to carry. Um, at one time, the FBI had a chart on handgun stopping power, which handguns stopping power is something that they kind of have, but it's more shot placement, always is, especially with handguns. Um, the benchmark was the 357 Magnum 125 grain jacketed hollow point by Federal at the time. They gave it about a 98% chance of stopping a human attacker with one shot at 20, 25 feet, 30 feet with a well placed shot. 9 millimeter was down more in the 60 percentile. It shows you the difference. More modern bullet technology, things have gotten better. This has gone up some on its percentage. This has pretty much stayed the same because you don't get much better than 97, 98%. These are the times that I want a revolver. They make semi-autos that shoot 357 Magnum. Um, Desert Eagle makes one. I believe Magnum Research may or did make one. Coogan makes a basically looks like a 1911, the old World War One, World War Two U.S. service pistol, all the way up through to the 80s. That shoots these. Those are very expensive. Semi-autos chambered in 357 Magnum, 44 Magnum, things like that tend to be very expensive. I can buy a really good revolver for $600, $800, that range. If I want one of those semi-autos, that's typically going to run you around $2,000 or more for a good quality new. We're talking new. You will find them cheaper sometimes, and I'm sure there's a few other manufacturers that make them, but those are kind of the bigger ones. Um, they're heavy. They have problems. This rim, which helps it in a revolver when it sits into the cylinder and stays there, becomes a problem when it's in a stacked magazine because they want to lock in with each other as they trying to be peeled off to chamber one. You get what's called rim stacking, can be an issue. So not as good in a semi-auto. Ugh, trying to get a hold of that slippery little thing. Not as good. The 9 millimeter not as good at protection against large wild game. Smaller stuff, coyote, a wolf, a mountain lion, even probably with the right rounds, something like that. Yeah, fine. Semi-autos have the advantage of usually larger capacity. Revolvers are typically 5, 6, or 7. There are 8 shot. There are more than that. I don't know what I think there's a 9 or was at one time a 9 shot 38 special. Don't quote me on that, but I think I remember seeing one. Maybe those were custom. The Taurus tracker is 7 shot. There have been some others, but 5 or 6 is pretty standard. You swing the cylinder out, you dump your rounds out. If you have a speed loader, they're pretty quick. If you're loading loose, they're not. My Ruger is literally like the old cowboy guns where you've got the little lever on the side you open up and you pull a rod under the barrel and it kicks the shell out and you spin it. Very slow to reload, very slow to unload and reload. It was never designed for that real quick, but it was reliable. It's robust firearm. They just work. I carry it when I'm deer hunting. It's about the only time I really carry that. So it doesn't matter. I've got 6 shots. Usually, if I'm using it, which I have had to, I shot a deer. I got up to it. It was not quite dead because I shot it very close and got up to it within seconds. And I finished it off with that. I only had to do that once on a deer. And that deer probably was dead, but it twitched a little, which could just be nerves. I decided to make sure. I wanted it out of any misery, any suffering that it might have had. In hindsight, I don't think it was still alive. I think it was just a nerve twitch. But that's where the revolver comes in. You can get heavier or higher powered cartridges in a revolver easier, especially when you start getting up to 44 Magnum, 454 Casul, pronounce it how you like, 500 Smith & Wesson Magnum, things like that, 45 Colt, which can be fairly weak up to fairly powerful, depending on loading that it has. Those don't do well as a semi-auto. They do great as a revolver. I don't think that capacity is always as big a deal as people make it out to be. Getting accurate information is difficult, but most civilian self-defense shootings are 3 to 5 shots, and the problem is solved. They may continue to shoot with an autoloader after that because of adrenaline rush. Not always necessary. It doesn't always happen that way, but a lot of times it's, 1 to let's say 5 shots. Well, most revolvers carry at least that. Whereas a lot of semi-autos standard capacity magazine for a lot of them is 12, 15, 17. Artificially 10 because that's what a lot of states have said you're only allowed to have. But most of them, a lot of them, when they were originally designed, were more than that, and originally sold were more than that. I would carry a 9mm every day of the week for around town, around my normal everyday thing. I carried a 45 for a long. I carried that Kimber Compact 1911 of mine for years. I like a 45 ACP. It got a little heavier, even though it's an aluminum frame, a little more cumbersome, so I switched to 9mm. And then I went to an H&K. Then I switched to a SIG P365, and I love it. It's small, it's compact, it's 12 rounds. Semi-autos, easy to reload, quick to reload. Simpler in some ways when you're going to tear them down and fix them. Anyone that thinks a revolver is super simple to completely strip apart has probably never had one apart, or is just really, really good at it, and they're like, well, this is easy. They're not. I don't recommend tearing them down to their bare components unless you really know what you're doing. Some of them you need a couple of specialty tools for, especially if it's a flat spring. You need a spring holder, spring compressor and holder. Those things are under ungodly tension. But there are times when I just think a revolver beats an autoloader. I think a revolver does not work for everybody, though. If all you do is I like to do some target shooting and I have a firearm for personal protection, home defense, autoloader is the way to go, in my opinion. Nothing wrong with a revolver in that role, but I think the autoloader is better. If you're somebody that I spend a lot of time hiking in the woods, I want a firearm on me to protect me, not just against two-legged attackers, but the four-legged ones. And I'm in, bear country, moose country, larger game that can be an issue. Then I would tell you to look at a revolver. Get a couple of speed loaders, practice with it, become quick with it. Chances are you're not going to need to reload, but if you did, you'd be able to. And now you can have something with the power to deal with it. 357 Magnum on a grizzly bear. There are people that will say it's not enough, way too light. I would tend to agree that it's as light as I'd probably want to go. Is a 357 Magnum. I'd be really fussy about what rounds I was carrying, and I'd want something with a good barrel length, 6.5 inch, to get as much velocity as I could. If I lived in grizzly bear country, I would probably be leaning more towards 454 Casull. Again, every time I pronounce it, someone says I do it wrong. 44 Magnum, 500 Smith & Wesson Magnum, and 460 are great. That's a lot. That's a lot of recoil, and I think you need to practice as much as you can. It's an expensive gun. They're not always the most pleasant to shoot. People tend to buy them, shoot them a few times, and say, okay, that's it. I don't want to shoot that again, but I'll carry it. And, well, now they can't hit anything with it. A hit with a 22 is better than a miss with a 500 Smith & Wesson Magnum, I guess, So learn how to shoot it well. 357 Magnum, I can practice with 38s, a little cheaper, and then go to the Magnums and practice with that, and then carry that. 454, I can do 45 Colt and 454. So, and 454 is more than enough. It's more powerful than 44 Magnum with the right loading. It's a very, very good cartridge. But I don't live in grizzly bear country. I live in black bear country. And 357 Magnum revolver is plenty. Maine State game wardens carried 357 Magnum revolvers forever. It was only, I don't know, 26, 27, 28 years ago, maybe a little more than that they switched to 357 SIG semi-autos. And that was because their revolvers were getting worn out. It was time to do something different. Because our game wardens are also fall under the Maine State Police, they do assist in more regular. They don't really do traffic stops much. They can, but that's not really their thing. But they were also dealing with a lot more illegal poaching of any type, running across marijuana drug grows. Marijuana is legal in Maine now, but it wasn't always. They were coming across some of these problems, smugglers and things like that, where they were getting more into one-on-one encounters with people. They needed a little more firepower. They were by themselves sometimes. A lot of times, there might be 3 or 4 people. They needed something with more capacity for that. But they still needed the hitting power for putting a deer down or dealing with moose and bear. Usually they'll grab a shotgun or rifle if they know they've got to go deal with something like that, but out of their truck. But not always. So it's a good cartridge. I like it. I like a revolver. Again, it's not for everybody. It's not for every situation. But if you think about it, even though auto loaders have existed since, well, you could argue kind of the very first ones, but the first commercially viable ones were the was it C96 Mauser, known as the broom handle Mauser, fed with a stripper clip to the top, semi-auto. If you've ever seen Star Wars, Han Solo's blaster is based off in one. He's got like a cone on the front of it, and obviously he's got a little like optic thing on there. But although I think some of the original ones had that little bit of a cone sort of deal on it too. Kind of a flash hider, not really. Maybe just the ones I'm thinking of. I have fired one and it did not have that. They're fun to shoot. I fired one a few times. Not always the funnest to load, but they're fun to shoot. So you're talking 1896. I think Bergman's and some of the others were previous to that, but they were never successful. But revolvers were carried by law enforcement and most individuals all the way through into the 80s is when you started seeing law enforcement really take that shift to semi-autos. A lot of that came out of the 1986 Miami FBI shootout down in Miami-Dade County with the 2 bank robbers, armored car robbers, car thieves, murderers. They did a lot of stuff. And that shootout, they were kind of outgunned in a lot of ways. So they kind of started ditching revolvers and going to semi-autos. It's where the 40 Smith & Wesson round kind of comes from, too. Is like, we need something more than 9mm, though, too. And they went to 10mm and then cut that down to 40. If you want to see a really, really good breakdown on that and what happened and why things changed to autoloaders, Paul Harrell, who has sadly passed away now, did a excellent breakdown. He was a firearms instructor and security instructor in the military. He went through the FBI training on this stuff to teach it. He was excellent. We sadly lost him a few years ago now to pancreatic cancer. He's a bit older than I am. I don't know. I'd say he's probably about 10 years older than I am. But anyways, he did a really good one on the 1986 Miami-Dade shooting. If you look that up on YouTube, you will probably see Paul Harrell. I think he did say it was pronounced Harrell. It's on there. Excellent video. And he did some other kind of follow-ups with the firearms too. But it's a great video. Watch that. You can get a lot of information from him. His brother runs the channel now with some of his other crew, his guys. He ran a business that some sort of security training business. I don't know the whole thing. At one point, his brother is a retired deputy sheriff. So Paul was Marine Corps and then National Guard, Oregon, out in Oregon. Anyhow, times when a revolver is better, times when autoloaders are better. I would say autoloaders are better 90% of the time. But I like a revolver. I like the old school classic revolver. Again, more punch from your ammo typically. I mean, if you get a 22 revolver versus a, 10 millimeter semi-auto, well, no, the semi-auto has a lot more firepower. And 10 millimeter is what a lot of people will carry if they want an autoloader and they're in those bear country areas like that. It is a very powerful handgun. However, you can get more power of a 357 Magnum with the proper loads. You can also get longer barrels, which do help increase velocity because it's under pressure longer, burning more powder. Every half inch will equate to roughly 60 feet per second, one way or the other. Half inch shorter, you're going to be less. Half inch more, you're going to be longer. That's a rough ballpark. It varies from barrel length to ammo type to caliber. It just all kinds of things. It's that kind of rough, generalized thing. Once I know how YouTube will react to certain things, I will gladly have some of my firearms out to go into a deeper dive on it. This is not a firearms channel. We will discuss them from time to time. If it's not your thing, feel free to skip to another video. I'm not telling you what to buy. I'm not telling you to buy one. I'm not telling you not to buy one. I will give my opinions on certain things. And it's just that. It's my opinion. My opinions are based on my experiences, my training that I've had, my research, everything. You're going to have your own ones. You're going to come to your own conclusions. Awesome. I know guys that only carry a revolver. Period. Pure, plain and simple. They will not carry an autoloader because they've had issues with them in the past jamming too much. And they have had some higher quality autoloaders. It's not like they're buying the cheapest junk that you can find. But that's on them. If you, what they call weak wrist it or limp wrist it and let that firearm really come back on semi-auto, on some of them they'll jam because that slide doesn't have a chance to come all the way back. Everything's coming back, and you've taken some inertia away from the slide. So you need a good grip. Revolvers, that's not an issue. Because there's nothing, it's not automatically doing anything. You reset it all each time. Again, it's up to you. Revolvers tend to be heavier until you get into snub noses. There's some really light ones. I've had some titanium airweight snub nose 38s, which they were nice, but again, not really what I was looking for. So, but we won't be doing just that. We're going to, there's automotive stuff, there's life stuff, there's DIY stuff, there's mechanic stuff, I just finished editing and uploading a video. This is Monday, May 4th, about 11 o'clock, so I uploaded that probably around, I don't know, between 10 and 10:30, all on how much I loved growing up in the 80s and things from the 80s and 90s. I titled it, Man, I Love the 80s. And then the description, I kind of went in like it's a movie title thing, like some of the stupid ones that we grew up with. I like a lot of the really stupid movies. A lot of Mel Brooks stuff, a lot of anything like that. But there will be some. I've got some older, I'm looking at my gun safes over there, so I have some older 1930s Winchester lever action, some from the 50s, very early 40s double barrel shotguns. These were guns that were my great grandfather's, my grandfather's, my father's, and now mine. Some I've passed on to my son, who's an adult now. That was the instructions with them, shall we say. And then I've got modern stuff. I love my ARs. I have a more modern shotguns as well too. I've got an old 50s pump Remington shotgun 870 that was my dad's. He's gone now too, and I have it. I like a variety of things. I have modern bolt actions and semi-autos and all that fun stuff. And I'm looking to add more. I am looking at a new revolver, 357 Magnum, something lighter than my big Blackhawk that I can carry, especially like fishing. I sometimes want that Magnum on me because I'm deep in the woods and in areas where I could come across a bear that not happy I'm there. Typically, there's no issue, and I won't shoot one unless I know that okay, if I don't do something, I'm in a world of trouble. Um, it's not my goal to just go out and shoot a bear for the sake of it. Hunting, maybe. I don't know. I don't know if I want to drag one out. So, anyhow, that's my little spiel on revolvers versus autoloaders. And there's more that I could go into, but we're almost 40 minutes, and I'll have to watch this back through, see how bad I rambled. I may re-record it. All right, till then, be safe, behave if you feel like it. Try to at least. And see you on the next one. Bye.